Known as the Wise Men have had more talks with the Vice President about transferring power away from Hosni Mubarak. Now, these are some of the developments that there have been in a little more detail. Alan Fisher is our correspondent.
They've closed the parliament. Workers have been told to go home. Soldiers have entered to protect it. The first time the army has been on parliamentary ground in Egypt.
We will not let the politicians enter. We do not need them. We told them before that. We do not need you.
Liberation Square remains the focus of the push against Hosni Mubarak and his government. It's become a makeshift village for young and old. Things are calmer on Wednesday after the massive street protests on Tuesday, which brought tens of thousands out, many of them for the first time. One of Egypt's top pop stars came to the protest but was booed off stage after he spoke in support of the president. "Come down," the crowd chanted.
They asked me to go up and speak and save the country, and I imagined I'd be saving the people. I want to tell them I got it wrong.
At the United Nations, Egypt's been the hot topic. The Secretary-General, Ban Ki-moon, defending his call last week for an immediate transition of power.
What I said was that the government leaders should listen more attentively to the genuine aspirations of people, and there should be a transition, and the sooner the better, and the future of their country and transition process should be something which should be decided by the people.
Egypt's ambassador says the process of reform is underway.
I think the Vice President have already spoken about it, but it is timeline. It is taking place immediately.
Egypt's Vice President says the crisis must end soon. The protests must be called off. The people on the streets won't give him what he wants until they get what they want. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera.
The former Liberian President Charles Taylor's boycotted his war crimes trial at The Hague for the second day running. Proceedings have now been adjourned while the judges decide whether or not to allow an appeal by Taylor's legal team. His lawyers are angry that a defence document has been ruled inadmissible. Taylor denies 11 counts of war crimes and crimes against humanity, supposedly committed during the Sierra Leone Civil War in the 1990s.
You know what this is about, their denial of our final brief? It's about simply this. You're not running this court, Mr. Taylor. We are. And we're going to show you who's in charge by rejecting your final brief. So this is about ego, not justice. And I really don't see that this kind of personalized politics has any part to play in a court of law.
Italian prosecutors have requested the indictment of Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi on charges that he paid for sex with an underage woman and abused his power to cover that up. Here's Lawrence Lee.
He may be one of the great survivors, but there's no doubting Silvio Berlusconi has reason to worry. Even given his ability to hold on to power despite all kinds of allegations of financial or personal impropriety in the past, there now appears to be so much evidence linking him firstly to a young showgirl known as Ruby, and then to sex games known as bunga bunga parties, that prosecutors believe they've got enough against him to have a criminal trial straight away. Like everything to do with Berlusconi, this case has split Italy, this time apparently with the young saying he deserves everything he gets, but older people prepared to forgive the aging politician.
This is absolutely just. I think it's incredible that people still don't understand what kind of person he is. He must start paying the price for what he's done.
The best thing would be for Berlusconi to resign and then a transitional government to come into work on electoral law.
Well, he loves what he does. He should just do it a bit more cleverly, like many others do.
Berlusconi's been lucky in that his opponents have been unable to capitalise on his problems in the past. Now, though, they smell blood.
We want the judges to make the truth come out, and we want him to go to trial. That's the only thing we ask. Then, if he's innocent, God bless him, and in a couple of weeks, we will know the truth.
In the face of all this, Berlusconi's latest response has been to say that the country needs political stability to keep Italy's economic reforms on track.
Le misure che abbiamo adottato sono state apprezzate.
The measures we've brought in have been appreciated by the international authorities, and they've confirmed opposition is strong, but have said we need stable government to maintain a positive attitude from the international business community.
Which is another way of saying it shouldn't matter what I do in private as long as we have political stability, not perhaps the kind of philosophy in keeping with the ideals of the European Union. Lawrence Lee, Al Jazeera.
A South Sudan government minister has been shot dead at his office in the capital, Juba. The shooting is just days after a referendum confirmed that South Sudan will become Africa's newest independent state. Jimmy Lemmy was the Minister for Rural Development and Cooperation. 1,200 police are being deployed in Indonesia for the latest trial of the Muslim cleric Abu Bakr Bashir. This is the third time he's been before the courts in 10 years, and this time he's been accused of funding a terrorist training camp. More from Step Varsen.
He is known for his fiery speeches and endless campaign for an Indonesian Islamic State. 72-year-old Abu Bakr Bashir has never been convicted of direct involvement in terrorist attacks, despite 2 previous trials and jail terms. Prosecutors now say they have enough evidence showing Bashir has funded a terrorist training camp in Aceh and helped to buy weapons used to commit acts of terror. Footage has emerged of the camp in Aceh, where armed fighters can be seen undergoing military training. In a statement, they call themselves Al-Qaeda Indonesia. More than 130 members of the group were arrested after police raided the camp in 2010. Those who escaped were allegedly involved in bank robberies and an attack on a police station that killed several policemen. Prosecutors say they now have evidence the group was planning Mumbai-style attacks, allegedly targeting embassies, hotels and the presidential palace. Bashir is the founder of an Islamic boarding school in central Java that has educated several people convicted for terrorism in the past. The cleric has a small but dedicated group of followers. He spent 2 years in prison in connection with the Bali attacks in 2002, but was never proven to be the leader of Jemaah Islamiyah, the network held responsible for the bombings. In 2004 he was jailed again, but got an early release in 2006. Abu Bakr Bashir has kept silent so far, but he did write a letter obtained by Al Jazeera, in which he uses several verses from the Quran to endorse the armed training camp in Aceh. But if this letter and the testimony of 134 witnesses will be enough to jail him for terrorism is still a serious challenge for the prosecution. Step Fasten, Al Jazeera, Jakarta.
Armed men have seized a supertanker carrying $200 million worth of crude oil off the coast of Oman. The Greek-owned Irene was attacked by a group that took the 25 crew members captive. Authorities have been able to communicate with the ship, which has 7 Greeks on board, 17 Filipinos and 1 Georgian. Emotions running high in Pakistan after an American man shot and killed 2 armed men he says were trying to rob him. Anti-US protests have been taking place in Lahore ever since the incident almost 2 weeks ago. Kamal Haider reports.
A diplomatic row is brewing between Pakistan and the US over the arrest of an American citizen. Raymond Davis is being held in the shooting deaths of 2 people in Lahore. He says they were trying to rob him at gunpoint. The US Embassy asserts he's a diplomatic employee and his arrest is a clear violation of the Vienna Convention. So far, Pakistan disagrees. Davis has already appeared in court and his case continues.
This US diplomat gunned down 2 innocent civilians in broad daylight. We want to inquire what he was doing on the streets of Lahore with a pistol and all alone.
Events after the shooting added to the existing outrage in Pakistan. That's when a US consulate vehicle drove the wrong way down a one-way street, killing a motorcyclist before leaving the scene. Tens of thousands of protesters have rallied in Lahore to demand justice. The US sent a senior congressional delegation to demand that Islamabad free Davis. However, fearing a major backlash, the Pakistani government says it will let the court decide. That's not good enough for some US lawmakers, who are now threatening to stop aid to Pakistan. The event is now creating a complex scenario, with Pakistan jeopardizing its relations with its largest provider of economic and military assistance. While the USA stands to alienate, one of its major allies in the war next door in Afghanistan. Kamal Haider, Al Jazeera, Islamabad.
At least 4 Russian sailors are dead and 7 are missing after a Cambodian cargo ship sank off the coast of South Korea. Coast Guards think the vessel, called the Alexandra, collided with a so far unidentified ship. New military talks between South and North Korea have collapsed just 2 days in. They were the first discussions between the two sides since the shelling of a South Korean island in November. Harry Fawcett reports.
Day 2 of these talks was recorded in still pictures, not video, and in the end there was a similar lack of movement in the positions of the two sides.
Today, South and North Korea proceeded with the second working-level meeting for the inter-Korea high-level military talks in the House of Peace in Panmunjom, but it ended without agreement.
South Korea wanted any high-level talks to centre on and result in so-called responsible measures for 2 fatal incidents in 2010. The shelling in November of Yeonpyeong Island, south of the disputed Western Sea border. 2 Marines and 2 civilians were killed, and the sinking of its Chonan warship in March with the loss of 46 lives. According to the South Korean account, the northern delegation said those issues would only be embraced as part of a wider discussion about provocations by both sides. Not good enough for their southern counterparts. After the shelling of Yeonpyeong Island in November last year, one respected measure of public sentiment put the proportion of South Koreans either concerned or very concerned about the security situation at a record high, more than 80%. At Seoul's War Memorial Park, there was little optimism that the talks would advance the cause of peace.
Before any talks, the North should have provided a sense of trust. Without trust, real dialogue cannot happen.
We have to provide aid to the North when we have to, but now it is time to stick to principle. North Korea should make an apology.
One Conservative member of the Parliament's National Defence Committee says any further talks will founder on the same issue.
They will talk, but they cannot find any point or any space or any area of cooperation or agreement.
There is another view that North Korea is becoming increasingly desperate for a resumption of aid, and that its sheer willingness for talks in the first place signals